Hey, this is part 3 of my interview with Brett McCracken on his book Hipster Christianity. This is recorded from DougPagitRadio.com, from the Doug Pagitt Radio Show. You're welcome to listen to the entire show over at DougPagitRadio.com or the other 2 installments of this interview. Thanks. Welcome back to Doug Pagitt Radio on AM 950. We're a little square around here, so we're not bothered at all by this hipster Christianity particular problem. Hey, we're with Brett McCracken, and Brett has written a book called Hipster Christianity, asking the question about how do Christians and churches integrate themselves with the question of the culture and of being cool or not, and how they should go about engaging with the rest of the world that they live in. And so, Brett, we're glad to have you back on the show, and tell us what's the issue you're facing, what's the problem that you're addressing, and what's the solution that hipster Christianity wants people to at least consider as they make these deep thoughts about the role of Christianity in the world that we live in.
Yeah, I think the problem is that so many churches think that in order to retain their younger members and keep them engaged in the church is that they have to make it cool and meet them at their young, hip level and, quote the right movies and music and wear the right things and have the right bands and lighting, and just this idea that the church has to be cool in these other like cultural accoutrements ways rather than focusing on the message itself. And so what I'm proposing as an alternative is maybe we need to still think about contextualization and how to reach the culture, but maybe make sure that we're focusing just as much or more attention on preaching a deep, meaningful, transformative message, and maybe making sure that we are being a biblical community that lives and loves and reaches out to the culture in those sort of relational ways as well as these superficial, kind of cool, stylish ways.
Yeah, I see. So do you feel like somehow those compete with one another? Somehow there's a competition between someone who wants to tell the story of God's activity in the world, God's love for people, God's invitation for people to enjoy, participate in what God's about in the world, that somehow is degraded or lost, or that only the time can only be put to one issue as opposed to both? Like, is that the issue that you think's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is, at the end of the day, there's a question of time and resources, and what are you going to devote your resources to as a church and as a pastor? How are you going to lead your congregation? Are you going to have this numbers mentality where it's all about getting people in the door and getting a bigger congregation? In that case, I think you might default more to these stylish packaging things because it's all about getting people in the door, or you could focus your energies away from that and on cultivating a community that is just like the gospel lived out and loving your community and engaging in it, in a missional sort of way, and just being an authentic community that is attractive just by nature of what it is that people encounter when they come in on a Sunday.
And what, one of the arguments that you make in the book, and I think it's an interesting way to put this together, is to say that there are those who are sort of naturally hip or cool, meaning they're doing things out of an authentic response, and then those who are created or marketed hip and cool. And it seems like that's one of the big distinctions you're trying to make in the book is, look, if it's authentic Christianity for you to meet in a room that has a certain vibe to it, or if you really think that a movie is meaningful to you and helps you understand something, then that's okay. But if you're just doing these things as a means to sort of get people, like a marketing trick, then you shouldn't do it. Do I have that right? Is that kind of the argument that you're making?
Yeah, I think that is a very important distinction that I make in the book, is because I don't want to say that hipster culture is bad. I mean, I think it can be a great thing when it is authentic and organic, and it's just a reflection of what a community is. Like, if you're just a hipster that lives in Brooklyn or Wicker Park in Chicago, and you just like certain bands and you like a certain fashion aesthetic just because that's your community and that's who you are, and if there's a church in that community that is made up of all these sorts of hipsters, and they just become a hipster church organically because that's what they are, that's fine. That's perfect. That's great. That you are being true to your community and true to your context. But the negative thing, the problem that type of cool that I'm kind of critiquing is the wannabe cool, the marketed hip, where it's used more as a means to an end. It's used in this utilitarian mindset. And these are the churches and the pastors who don't really care so much about the art and the culture for itself. They only care about it insofar as it helps them be, up and up and relevant and on the cutting edge.
I see. So it's kind of, to borrow a phrase from the kids, they're kind of being posers on the thing. So it's an inauthentic representation of it. But how does one determine whether they are a poser or whether they now have seen a new part of culture? They've now realized that art or discussion or conversation or topics about relevant issues are really meaningful to them and to those around them, and they're becoming those people. How do they, in your rubric here, how do they differentiate between I'm just giving it all up because I'm selling out to a market versus, hey, I'm working really hard here to try to figure out how the gospel's alive in my world, and I don't want to be tied into simply the cultural norms that I was sort of Christianized into?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I encourage pastors to do in the book is to really cultivate a sense of their own tastes when it comes to art and culture, and look at the music that you resonate with and the movies that you like, and figure out why those things resonate with you. And I think for anyone, it's healthy to cultivate that self-aware sense of taste and what sorts of cultural artifacts and items resonate with you. Because if you don't do that, if you don't figure it out for yourself first, then it's always going to be a little inauthentic to try to present a certain image of yourself or your culture itself to anyone else.
Now you had a editorial in the Wall Street Journal this last week, which, congratulations, that's a big deal, right? I mean, it got I'm glad for you. And in there you use some different sort of explanations and different kinds of illustrations than you use in the book. And there you talked about how people like Lauren Winner and Rob Bell and these folks are writing books about sexuality, and you spoke about that in kind of like this is an example of what I think we shouldn't do. But Rob Bell and Lauren, they're kind of perfect. I mean, they're just talking about things that were actually personally impactful on them. But you threw that into the category of they're just trying to sell out to a marketplace. Yeah,
and that's one of the lines that I wish I could have go back and change.
Boy, don't we all have those? Yeah, no.
Because I love those books. Like that Real Sex book by Lauren Winner is one of my favorite books on the topic, and Rob Bell's book is pretty great as well. So I didn't mean to come across as lumping them in with all these other, maybe perhaps more questionable sex-related tactics. All I was doing was trying to paint a broad brush picture of the increasing prevalence of sex in Christian media and Christian culture. So,
Well, yeah, and I mean, in some ways, I think we need. I'm sort of two minds on the sex issue in Christianity. I feel like we need to talk about it more if we're going to talk about it better, and talk about it less if we're going to talk about it badly. And I feel like those people are trying to talk about it better. As opposed to some of the other people we've mentioned here in the interview already, whose perspective of Christianity I think is really quite bizarre, that you'd have it that way. Well, this is Brett McCracken. You can find him all over the internet. You can look at Hipster Christianity, and it would lead you to a link to the book. Brett, are you going to be traveling to Minnesota anytime soon?
I don't know. It's not on my current.
Well, why don't you jump on a bus and head out here to the great Minnesota get-together called the Minnesota State Fair next week. We'll see you on Sunday morning or the following one at the Minnesota State Fair. That's Brett McCracken. Brett, thanks for spending your time with us here on this Sunday morning. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Hey, we'll be back here with the Cripes, the Come On, the You Got to Be Kidding Me, as well as the Right On, all clumped together here on Doug Pagitt Radio on AM 950. The voice of Minnesota and DougPagittRadio.com.
Listen.